Hey. That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
He did what?
Jackpot, baby!
Ice up, son. Ice up.
That is blasphemous.
You can put it on the board. Yes.
My top 10 teams, top 10 winners of NFL offseason so far, starting off with number 1 in the Kansas City Chiefs. And yes, the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that lost Tyreek Hill, the team that traded away Tyreek Hill. Yes, that team. Yeah, you heard me right. And this may be an unpopular opinion, but I actually love the Tyreek Hill trade from the Kansas City Chiefs side. Tyreek Hill, as you may have known, had a little bit of a character issue, at least from my standpoint. I always thought he was kind of a bad character. He had that the domestic violence issue a while back. He's always seemed like a selfish player, and he always seemed like he had a big ego. And the moment, and I always kind of felt like that in the back of my mind, but that was solidified when the Chiefs wouldn't give him, wouldn't give him like the biggest deal in NFL history or whatever, and then he said, "I want out." As soon as they wouldn't give him what he wanted out. How weak is that? So that solidified my thoughts on Tyreek Hill when he did that. So I like the idea that you got rid of that bad ego and that bad character in the locker room because, as I mentioned, I've said this plenty of times before throughout the past few years I've been with I've had the show going. You can have a perfect team. You can have a absolutely perfect team, but you have one bad apple and it ruins it for everybody. For example, just look at Antonio Brown and the number of teams he's been on in his career. The team's been great. But him being one bad apple absolutely ruins the rest of the team. That's all it takes. So I think it's great that you can get rid of a guy that, maybe he didn't cause issues on the Kansas City Chiefs yet, but I feel like if you would have kept him around, it would have cost you some issues. And when you have that kind of person, you just got to get them off your team. I don't care how talented they are. You got to get rid of a bad character like that. Also, take a look at it from a money standpoint real quick. He wanted all that money and a huge extension. And by the way, let's not forget that you signed Patrick Mahomes a few years ago to that absolute monster deal. So if you signed Tyreek Hill to that deal, you probably would have run into some issues with being able to pay both him and Patrick Mahomes. And now that you've gotten rid of that, that clears up cap space not only for this year, but for the next 5 years that he wanted his deal or whatever, right? However long of an extension he wanted. You pretty much clear that up, which is great. So now that ensures that you'll most likely keep Patrick Mahomes for the long term. And, sure, you got rid of Tyreek Hill. Sure, he was great. Sure, he was one of the most talented receivers in the league. But you also have a pretty good running back core with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And there's somebody else on the team. Oh, no, I guess you really only have him. No, they signed Jerick McKinnon, didn't they? So you got a pretty good running back core there. And, yeah, you may have lost Tyreek Hill. But you went out and you signed Juju Smith-Schuster to a one-year deal, and I believe they signed Marquez Valdes-Scantling to a 1 or 3 year deal. I can't remember which one it was. But you signed him. You re-signed a huge offensive line, I don't mean this literally, but it was a huge deal that you re-signed Orlando Brown. That's huge. Yeah, on the defensive side of things, sure, you lost Charvarius Ward, but Justin Reed, not a bad rebound, not a bad, guy that you can get there. And I think if you get Tyrann Mathieu back, then you'll really look like a great team. And not to mention, and I think the Chiefs lost. It was Byron Pringle or Demarcus Robinson they lost. I believe they lost one of those two guys. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. My apologies. But, you've got Travis Kelce, you've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, Smith-Schuster, Valdez-Scantling, and, the Chiefs, sure, you lost Tyreek Hill, but it's not like, the Chiefs are going to be terrible now just because they lost that one guy. You'll be fine. The Chiefs are going to be fine. And I actually really like what they did, or what they've done so far in free agency. Number 2, the Cleveland Browns. And no, that is not a pun. I did not, purposely put the Cleveland Browns at number 2 on my top 10 list. But I thought that they were the second best team so far in NFL free agency. And the reason for that is one of the top 10 desired quarterbacks of the offseason was Desean Watson, right? And any team that had a middle-of-the-pack to bad to no quarterback was going to try to go out and get that guy, right? And Houston was like, we want a star player, we want a 4th-round pick, we want a 2/3, 2 seconds, and a 1st-round pick. And they were asking for everything. They were asking for everything but the kitchen sink. And the Browns, of all teams, who had Baker Mayfield, who wasn't terrible, wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. They had a quarterback. They had 2 really good running backs. They had Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Austin Hooper, and not T. Higgins, but Rashard Higgins. Pretty decent offensive artillery. And they traded for Desean Watson. And before I looked at the specifics of the deal, I would have thought, they had to have traded Baker Mayfield, maybe Kareem Hunt, and quite a few draft picks, right, in order to get Desean Watson. They traded, draft picks, and that was it for Desean Watson. So you won the Desean Watson sweepstakes without trading away your previous starting quarterback, who was pretty good. How could it get any better, right? How, that is the definition of fleecing a team. And now for the Texans, you traded away Desean Watson, who, I get it, he wasn't going to play anyway, but if you're going to trade him away, if I'm Houston, I'm getting somebody back. I'm getting a quarterback back in return, right? Whether it's Baker Mayfield or Case Keenum or whoever it is, I'm getting somebody back in return. You have to. So the Browns have Desean Watson and Baker Mayfield currently, though I'm not super confident that they're going to keep Baker Mayfield around for the long term. I get that. I'm not saying that they're going to have both of them when the season starts. But are the Browns going to keep Baker Mayfield in case Desean Watson gets suspended? Who knows? And then who knows if Baker would even play at that point if he's upset with Cleveland. Not to mention the Browns got Amari Cooper after losing Jarvis Landry. They franchise tagged David Njoku after losing Austin Hooper. So they really they've lost a few guys, but they've been able to make up for it in plenty. They're doing fine, and I'm a huge fan of what they've done so far in the offseason. Number 3, the LA Chargers. Last year, their defense was a huge talking point. It was, sure, they've got a great offense. Justin Herbert is a really good young quarterback. Austin Eckler's great. Keenan Allen's great. Jared Cook was fine. And Mike Williams is a guy you got to lock up for the future. The offense was fine. It was defense. And yeah, Derwin James, Asante Samuel, and Joey Bosa were doing much of the heavy lifting. But it was, other than those top 3 guys, it wasn't looking so great. So what do? They go out and absolutely load up on defense. They get 2 of the top. They get 2 of the top 5 defensive free agents this year in J.C. Jackson, who was one of, if not the leader in interceptions last year. They go and get him, pair him with Derwin James and Asante Samuel Jr. That's a pretty good secondary. And then you go and get Khalil Mack to match him up with Joey Bosa. Combined with the fact that they just signed Mike Williams to a 3-year deal, 3-year extension, the LA Chargers are probably on paper have their best team in quite some time. So I'm a huge fan of what the LA Chargers have done this offseason. I think they're building an absolute monster of a team, and this year will be both Justin Herbert. I mean, I think Justin Herbert proved himself last year, but I think this year will be Brandon Staley's prove-it year. Staley did a really good job, I think, in his first year as a head coach, but he is going to be under a lot of pressure to take a huge leap with all this talent. Number 4, Denver Broncos. I mean, they got Russell Wilson. They acquired the best quarterback they're going to have since Peyton Manning retired. And by the way, they dumped off Drew Lock and Teddy Two Gloves in the process. Traded Drew Lock to Seattle, got rid of him. Thank goodness. I mean, there was so much pressure on Drew Lock to succeed in Denver. It was, hey, there's a lot of people, he's the guy, right? He's got to do well. And let's be honest, did anybody really think Drew Lock was going to be the next big guy in Denver? No, nobody with a brain really thought Drew Lock was going to be the guy in Denver. And Teddy Bridgewater, who had a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but a lot of people were saying, oh wow, Teddy Bridgewater is going to be great for this team, and it just never really came together, which was a shame, because Teddy Bridgewater, the story, I love his story with the brutal knee injury, and his comeback story is great. But, I mean, you have to look at facts, and it's time to do so. He wasn't going to be the guy that was going to be there for long term. And when you're a Denver Broncos team that's rebuilding, yeah, I get that. You're going to have a new coach, and what a way to give Nathaniel Hackett in his first year, what a way to welcome him to Denver, none other than to get Russell Wilson. And not to mention, you still got Jerry Jeudy. What's the other wide receiver's name? Cortland Sutton, and a few other guys as well. I would like to see the Broncos re-sign Melvin Gordon, and I would also like to see them re-sign Kareem Jackson. That would make them playoff contenders if they aren't already. I also really like the signing of Randy Gregory. That really makes up for the fact that they lost Von Miller last year. Number 5, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, prior to the Bruce Arians retiring, I had Tampa Bay at number 5. I'm not really sure what this does for them on this made-up top 10 list, but Tampa Bay, you just had the greatest quarterback of all time decide that he wanted to unretire after 40 days. I'd call that a win. You were probably going to have... you probably were going to go out and trade for somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody like that. But other than that, you had Kyle Trask or Blaine Gabbert. Pretty happy to have Tom Brady come back. You also signed Chris Godwin to a 3-year extension after franchise tagging him, and you re-signed Leonard Fournette, and you still have Mike Evans. And on top of that, as if that wasn't already enough, the Buccaneers also acquired Russell Gage as well. A great replacement for Antonio Brown, as I think it's safe to say Antonio Brown's not going back to Tampa Bay. My apologies there. Starting off the second half of that list, we have the Raiders at number 6. And if you're asking me why, let me point to you none other than Davante Adams. To be able to go out and take away the guy that Aaron Rodgers loved the most, one of the top 3 reasons that Aaron Rodgers came back to Green Bay, to go out and trade for that guy and not give up too much is an absolute win. Now you give Derek Carr a true number 1 target. I'm not throwing any disrespect onto Darren Waller. He's a great tight end / wide receiver. He's very talented, but Davante Adams is just in a class of his own. Not to mention you still have Darren Waller, by the way, so that's pretty cool. And you have Josh Jacobs. It's just a matter of fact. It's just a matter of execution on the offensive part, as well as the new coach. That's going to be a little iffy as well. And I also like the fact that they beefed up their defense a little bit with the acquisition of Chandler Jones. I know Chandler Jones is getting up there in age, but that is a very good that's a very good move nonetheless. Number 7, the Miami Dolphins. I know I said that I like the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs traded away Tyreek Hill, but if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I like the fact that I got Tyreek Hill. If the Chiefs were going to trade him away, I like being the team that got him. Having him with Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, also, like that is great in of itself. The Dolphins also went out and acquired Cedric Wilson from the Cowboys, not a bad wide receiver, number 3. They got Raheem Mostert from the Niners. The Raheem Mostert was on the Niners previously, and Cedric Wilson was on the Cowboys previously. They were not necessarily trades. I think they were free agent signings, but those were really good. Those really good signings as well. Not to mention the fact that they improved their offensive line with Connor Williams and Teron Armstead. There's only one issue. You have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Cedric Wilson, Raheem Mostert, and Mike Gesicki, but no good quarterback to throw them the ball. And if this was, if it wasn't already obvious, I'm going to come out and I'm going to be Captain Obvious here and say this is Tua Tagovailoa's prove it year. To be given Mike Gesicki, Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Cedric Wilson, and Jalen Waddle, if you struggle and if you have a bad season, that's on you. That is not on your coach. That is not on the front office. That is not on your offense. That is not even on your offensive line. And if they've beefed that up as well, it's on you. This is Tua Tagovailoa's prove it year. If he can't get it done this year, it's probably just it's not going to work out in Miami, and that's going to be that. So this is great, right? They got all these great acquisitions, they got all these great signings, and it's so great. You know why? Because that means now that they can really compete with New England for second place in the AFC East. How great is that? Speaking of AFC East, at number 8, I have the Buffalo Bills. I really like the fact that they got Von Miller, because just like the LA Chargers, defense was a huge talking point last year. After losing Tre'Davious White due to injury, defense really struggled. And, that was a large reason why. I mean, especially after they lost to Kansas City in the AFC Championship, it was, defense. You should have gone out and stopped the Chiefs if you wanted to win the game so bad. They go out and get Von Miller, except there's one issue I have with the Von Miller signing. And it is the fact that Von Miller is 33 years old, and they signed him to a 6-year deal. I'm sorry, but I just don't see Von Miller playing till he's 39 years old. He could, and if he does, that'd be great, but I just don't see it. I also am really a huge fan of the fact that they signed O.J. Howard. They already have a great wide receiver core with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. They did lose Cole Beasley, not too bad. Dawson Knox is also a great tight end. And to go out and pair him up with O.J. Howard, if the offense wasn't already set, it is now. So I'm really a big fan of what Buffalo did this offseason. I think they should be considered one of the top 10 winners of the offseason so far. Number 9, the New Orleans Saints. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, which is fine. But I think getting Jameis Winston back is absolutely huge, because look at what the Saints did in the first half of the season when Jameis Winston was healthy. They were fighting with Tampa Bay for the number one for the number 1 spot in the AFC South. They were giving. I mean, they were number 1 in the AFC South for a few weeks, and they were, They beat Tampa Bay without Jameis Winston. They were winning in that game when he got hurt. And I mean, just the fact that the Saints have been the Buccaneers' bugaboo already, combine that with the fact that the NFC South is one of the weaker divisions, and will be one of the weaker divisions in the NFC this upcoming year. If you get a solid guy at quarterback, that is great. I don't want to say you're set to go, you're set to be a playoff team, but that helps you out tremendously. And, right now, after they've signed Jameis Winston, if he can play the way he did last season, they're going to be favorites to be second place in the NFC South, which that may sound like a joke, but it's not. And who knows, they might be able to compete with Tampa Bay for first place in that division. And sure, they did lose Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins. I don't think they're huge losses, and it's also not a terrible. It is also not as terrible because they got Marcus May from the Jets. Not terrible, right? I don't think you look at the fact that they lost those guys and only got Marcus May in return. I don't think you look at that and say, "Oh no, that's terrible." They lost big time on that. And sure, you did lose Teron Armstead. You didn't re-sign him. The offensive line might be a little bit weaker than it was last year. So there might be some reason to be concerned there. But there's a reason they're at number 9 and not number 3. And number 10, I just love this. The Jacksonville Jaguars at number 10. For the first time in 6 years, they're actually going out and they're trying in the offseason. And sure, I'm not going to say Christian Kirk is, the best signing of all time. But I'll give the Jacksonville Jaguars some respect for going out and signing Christian Kirk. He's a pretty good wide receiver. And, the offseason is not only just about signing players, it's about coaching as well. And, again, for the first time in 5 to 6 years, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have a head coach that isn't a complete idiot. So way to go. Good for them. And signing Brandon Scherff, huge. To have that guy on the offensive line, that is huge because giving Trevor Lawrence protection is super duper important. Like, I can't stress enough how important that is. And also some not bad signings. Signing guys like Darius Williams, a cornerback, and some other guys as well. Not bad. And I do like the fact that they've gone out and they've signed a bunch of guys. Is the sign everyone option the best plan of action? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I just like the fact that they're trying. They're not just sitting back and saying, "Nah, that's right. We'll go 2-15 next year. We'll lose every game and get somebody in the draft. We'll get them next year." They're actually going out and they're actually trying. So I got to give them credit for that. And then honorable mention to the Minnesota Vikings for going out and bringing Kirk Cousins back. And no, he's not great. That's why they're not in the top 10. No, they didn't get Russell Wilson. No, they didn't get any of the other top quarterbacks that were out on the market this offseason. So that's why they're honorable mention and not top 10. And yes, they did get Zadarius Smith. That's pretty good. They do have some good players on defense still. They do still have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook. So yeah, I would consider that a pretty successful offseason for Minnesota. But if you would have gotten a Desean Watson or Russell Wilson or one of those guys, without a doubt Minnesota would have been in the top 10 as one of the offseason winners.
Shut up and sit down.